how is this video going to go? Well, I'll tell you now. What's going to happen is that you're going to see me traveling to Allyouneedisbooks, also known as Zardoz, and you're going to see me doing a little tour of their warehouse and doing a little bit of a book haul, and I'm going to intersperse some footage of the actual books I bought in between so that, you know, it's got a little bit more of an interesting structure. So that's what's going to happen. Right, well, I'm here at Zardoz, All You Need Is Books, and I'm going to have a little look around first. And Maurice has very kindly picked me up from the local railway station, and Jules Bert's going to come back with me in a couple of weeks, and that's probably when I'll spend some time shopping, because I can see there's lots of interesting stuff here. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do a walk around and give you an idea of the extent of what Maurice has got here for sale, which is beautiful. Before we start, I know a lot of you always say you want to see the jackets and things, but you're going to see a lot of spines today because, as I say, I really want to show you the extent of how much stock we've got here, and you will probably almost certainly see some things you want. I mean, when I buy from Maurice, I usually have a look. I very often look on Abe, and I think things on the wish list there, but I buy direct from him because he's a good guy, makes more money that way, and you know, that's much better for him as a dealer. So if you're buying from AB Books, which, you know, you will do at times, we all do at times, do remember that very often dealers have their own sites and the prices are better, and occasionally if you turn out to be loyal, they can do you a discount and stuff, but, you know, be nice, wait till they offer, don't be too cheeky. And as you see here, we've lots of beautiful A format SFs, so there we go, all sorts of things. So as I say, we're going to do a walk around just so I can give you the extent of things, and then, you know, I might actually just see if there's anything I particularly want to look at. But I can just see that next time I come with Jules, I will have to do a proper bit of shopping while Jules has a film, and I'll probably make another little video as well. So yeah, lots of A format SF, and as you see, we've got some magazines here, some digest size magazines, sort of classic things in digest format. If you don't know what a digest is, you probably know what Reader's Digest is, so it's that sort of size. Things like Galaxy, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. New Worlds 8. Edited by Hilary Bailey in Sphere. Now, I used to have this, and I don't know what happened to it. I can't believe I got rid of it, but it must have gone when I was having a clear out. And Hilary Bailey, of course, was Michael Moorcock's wife, and she took on some of the editorship at this stage because Mike just said he couldn't read SF any longer. Just before that, Charles Platt did it. There were I think 8 of these in Sphere, and then there were a couple which were Corgi. Now, of course, the sort of actual volume number is much higher. It's like 242 or something. I can't tell you what it is. I could look it up, but I can't be bothered, to be honest. Bit of research for you. But yeah, this is a good one, and this dates from 75, and it's got some important stuff in it, actually. It's got all the great names: M. John Harrison, Michael Moorcock, Barrington J. Bailey. It's got artworks by Mal Dean, who just died at that point, and he illustrated the Jerry Cornelius books. And who else is in here? There's a virtually unreadable bit of criticism by John Clout, really went for it then. And there's a little bit by M. John as well, which focuses on Highline's Farnham's Freehold and Thomas M. Dish's 334, you know, which are new books then, I guess. And yeah, there's some great stuff in it. Probably the most important thing in here is M. John Harrison's Running Down, which is one of the key new wave stories, one of his first really mature stories, and it's about a man who embodies entropy. And I've mentioned many times on the channel Alfred Bester's The Pie Man, and I do think it was an influence on this story. There's also White Stars by Moorcock, which appeared in Legends from the End of Time later on, and Hilary of course co-wrote The Black Corridor with Mike, even though she's never been credited on the cover. It does say in here quite specifically that she was a co-author on that, so there you go. And around here we have more A formats, so this is just to give you an idea, and I'm seeing lots of old favourites popping out here, and Maurice has picked out a few books for me which I asked him about earlier on. And we are both on a time clock today because, you know, we've got work to do and stuff, but this is just to give you an idea. So there we are, lots of Pan there. Jules is going to like that. I used to work for Pan myself back in the day, used to run a shop for them. You've probably heard me mention that. So yeah, look at this, great stuff. So we've got down here, there's some more crime, and we can see this some Agatha Christie there. Not somebody I'm keen on, but you know, the collectors do love it. So yeah, we've got some more SF here. There's some ace doubles and the like. Absolutely lovely. And of course this is really difficult because I want to stop and look at everything, but really it's just to show you the extent of this fantastic dealership which Maurice has been building up since the early 90s, and he does all sorts of books. The name Zardoz, of course, comes from the film by John Boorman, which we all know and love, with a rather hairy Sean Connery in it. But as I say, the website is allyouneedisbooks.co.uk. And there's a beer sign there, I like that. And there is more. Another highlight for me is a writer who I've been thinking for a while I need to revisit, because even though I'm reading lots of 90s stuff at the moment, I am thinking about authors from the 80s who I haven't read for a long time, and a name that loomed large was Howard Waldrop. And Howard Waldrop was sort of briefly popular in the UK for a few years, sort of 87, sort of 88, that sort of period. And I believe he's from Texas, and I know that my friend Lee Kennedy knows him, and very funny guy. And a story of his that sticks in my head is a story called Flying Saucer Rock and Roll, and it's in this book, which I'd never ever seen before. And again, this is one that I contacted Maurice beforehand and said, can you put that aside for me? And this is Strange Monsters of the Recent Past by Howard Waldrop. There we go, and it's Ace again. Let's have a look at the date. Now I think, let's see, 1991, published by arrangement with Mark Zeising Books. So that is interesting, because the short story collection I remember in the UK that was available, and I think it's one that Zeising issued as well, was called A Dozen Tough Jobs. Basically had 12 stories in it, and I looked in this and it does have Flying Saucer Rock and Roll in it. It's got a foreword by Lewis Shiner, who I really revere, who's a very underrated writer. And Flying Saucer Rock and Roll is the one I remember. And it's a very funny story. And I seem to recall it's set in the 50s, and aliens land in this small town. And I think there's a sock hop or something of that kind going on. And the aliens square off against the local greasers. And I think it's in a sports arena. I'm probably wrong about all this. And they sort of trade sort of vocal moves, you know, the greasers sort of start doo-wopping at them and what have you. So it's a bit like the song Showdown, which the New York Dolls covered, but it's great fun. And I thought, well, you know, I could do with reading a bit more of Howard's stuff and revisiting him. And it's got a dragon on the cover, or is there a pterodactyl? I don't know. I'm very tempted to think there is a pterosaur of some kind. It does look like a pterosaur, so I'm going to go with a pterosaur. So isn't that lovely? Very nice indeed, and a very uncommon, as I say. I've never ever seen it. There is more in here. All sorts of things. Got lots of hard covers, and we've got there's some trade paperbacks here. We've got some full-on trade formats, then these sort of D's and C's, and also there's some B's here as well. And we've got some hardcover SF here too. this is where I have to calm down and not get overexcited, because, you know, actually looking through books is a different experience to shopping online, as you know, because you get serendipity, because what I will probably see here today is all sorts of things I'd like, which is why when I come next time, I'll do a brief video and let Jules do some filming while I have a proper look at what Maurice has got and make him some offers on some of his lovely stock. So if there's anything you want to get your gaps filled, I would say All You Need Is Books is your first stop, and obviously it's international postage for the UK as well. And what a fantastic lot of books. And Maurice does all sorts of things, as I say, and I'm used to being around lots of books. Where I work, we keep 77,000 titles. I once worked in a shop that kept 100,000, and I think Maurice has an active inventory of around about 53,000. So again, it's just to give you an idea of what we've got. So all sorts of lovely stuff. There we go. So now we've got an idea of the extent of what we got here. Hang on, I'm starting to look at some detail now, and there's a lot of Joe Lansdale there, but you know, it's great. And some science fiction book club here. I mean, some of the science fiction book club stuff is really nice. I mean, the later ones, the covers, there's a Greg Benford there, are really, really good. And you know, and some of them had similar covers to the originals. Like, for example, I've got the Methuen of that, and this is the SF Book Club edition, which is fewer colours, fewer tones used. But yeah, and really great to see. And you know, some of these books, they come up time and time again, but some are pretty uncommon. I mean, there's a Philip K. Dick preserving machine there. I've got one of those myself. So if you need that in your collection, get online, and Maurice will get that in the post to you, probably for a very reasonable price. I should mention that I find Maurice's prices to be very, very, very good indeed. I've always been impressed with them. His grading is reliable and consistent. So he hasn't got time to upload pictures, individual pictures of all the lots, because of course, you know, when you've got that many books. I used to have that Immoral Tales book. Look at that. Wow, what did I do with that? I sold it like you do with many things. There's a Solomon Kane poster there. Would you like a bit of Solomon Kane? Yes, so here we are. Fantastic. So this is where it all happens, guys. Absolutely great. So I'm going to have another scoot around to the SF and see what else we have. But yeah, so if if you've got things missing from your collection, you've got no excuse now. I imagine a lot of you will have already bought books from All You Need Is Books, but if you haven't, you know, you are missing out. I mean, obviously there are other dealers in the UK, but I have to say, consistently, for gap filling with my paperbacks, for price, quality, and as you see, sheer quantity, this guy cannot be beat. And what a nice man he is as well, letting me film you today. So thanks very much, Maurice, for letting me film. Now I know you're probably all sick of listening to me rabbiting on, but it really is a joy. So let's just stop here. And at the moment, as you know, I'm thinking a lot about the 90s. And here's somebody interesting writer who I really, really must make more effort to read more by, is Richard Corder. I'm just going to put these couple of paperbacks down here. Make sure I get those back, because it's very important to keep things in order. Richard Corder, best known for Dead Girls, rather nice HarperCollins paperback. Let me get it in frame. There we go. Of course, HarperCollins. Grafton it was before that, and you know my Grafton thing. I'm always a bit of a Grafton freak, aren't I? So there we go. And this is interesting. Here's a copy of Cosmic Comics by Calvino. I don't recognise that. That's interesting. Recognise the book, but not the publisher, which is not like me. Here's an early Orson Scott Card that I must get a copy at some point from Maurice, because I need that. That's on my long list, as it were, because of course one has a short list of the key things and a long list of the sort of big things. Gosh, this takes me back. Remember that livery for Speaker for the Dead? Really vividly takes me back. You know, it's a wonderful bit of nostalgia. So as you see, we're getting into the sort of detail more now. I'm showing you some of the jackets, and a lot of nice early copies of new writings in SF, edited by John Carnell. Now, of course, John Carnell was, you know, a major figure in SF editorship in the UK, and that series ran for 30 volumes, and after John passed on, it was taken on by Ken Bulmer, who a lot of you who collect Door paperbacks will know as Alan Burt Akers, the Dre Prescott series. And I did meet Ken Bulmer once at a con a very long time ago, and good solid British chap. And in fact, there's some Doors there, some Lynn Carter, whose work used to be everywhere in the 70s. When I was a kid, you know, up the valleys in South Wales, you'd find a rack spinner and it would be full of people like Lynn Carter. Those were the days. So I'm just going to stop a moment to pop those couple of books back where they belong. The Silverberg thing has been big with me recently, as you know, and this is not an uncommon book. In fact, this book is very common, and I've come across many sort of copies of it several times in sort of Hay on Wye and what have you and things, and you can usually pick it up for about a £5. You might pay a tenner for one and a bit better, Nick. This isn't bad. It does have some foxing on the top, but you know, this is life. And this is The Queen of Springtime, which is volume 2 of Silverbird's diptych, and it's diptych, it's not duology, kids. Duology is a word that some fool made up, which shouldn't be used, and publishers are using it, and it's not the correct term. And yes, I'm going to be a bore and a pedant about it, but it's part of a diptych. That's the correct term for a 2-volume series, and the series is called The New Springtime, and this has a different title in America. It's called, what's it called? I think it might just be called The New Springtime. I can't remember, but it's a different title in the States and a different cover. So there we go. This is part of my sort of catching up a bit with the later Silverbergs, which I mostly ignored, and they don't have such a great critical reputation. But as I say, I am edging towards SF completism with a great man, and it's a lovely book. You know, it's beautiful Gollancz royal format, wraparound artwork, absolutely lovely. So, you know, I just thought I may as well add it in there. Right, the initial excitement, I've calmed down a little bit now, and I'm looking a bit more A to Z, and oh, look at these. Everywhere you look, there's something to look. And of course, this isn't a shop, so normally people don't get to look around. So please don't, you know, end up sort of bothering Maurice and trying to knock on his door and what have you, because he's a busy man. He's got a lot of parcels to send out. There's some Alan Burt Akers, just there, in fact, lots and lots of them, which is great. And again, I always say this, but I mean, that's part of what this channel is about. I remember going to Fantasy Inn in London in the early 80s and a sea of Door paperbacks, some Aldis. I've got a lot of Aldis gaps to fill, actually. I really have. I mean, I've read probably about 30% of his work, maybe a bit more. And I just find that I do need to sort of plug some gaps. I mean, this is a favourite. I was talking about this. I say talking about it. I was sort of doing some comments on Moyd's channel, Media Deathcock, because he just done a review of Frankenstein. I was saying how much I like Frankenstein and Bound. And there will be a Frankenstein video coming up on the channel. And in terms of the usual thing, where there's a time paradox, by the time this comes up, I might have filmed it. And here's an interesting one. I know Jules had a copy of that in a haul recently, Magellan by Colin Anderson. Again, one on my long list. I must pick it up at some point. Now, as I say, Maurice does have some books aside from me, so I'm trying to restrain myself from grabbing everything I want, because we'd be here all day. And as I say, he's a busy man, I'm a busy man. You guys are just luxuriating over this. As you know, I've gone mad with Poul Anderson recently, so if you want to go mad with Poul as well, there's plenty here. I am kind of thinking about that, whether that was a good thing or not, to be honest. This is a nice little book. I love this. Love that cover. There you go. Hoka by Anderson and Dixon with the little teddy bear alien doing the Napoleon thing. Always love that cover. It's so cute. Earthman's Burden, of course, was the original title, which would probably be regarded as a bit politically incorrect now. But, you know, there you go. Times change. It is what it is. Yeah. Poul Anderson. Gosh, Poul Anderson takes me back. I mean, if you've got Poul Andersons in hardcover and good nick, you know, especially the ones from MacDonald in the Xanth period, you can name your prices, really. You really can. I used to sell tons of those back in the day. Tons and tons. So as you see, there's stuff here from all eras. That's a good little reference book. I used to have this. I must get a copy of that from him at some point. Yeah, Brian Ash. Nice little reference book. But yeah, this is a sort of glimpse into a lost world, you know, of how fantastic the A format paperback was and still is. And I do like that cover of Pebble in the Sky. I've got a hardcover of that. There's another edition of Pebble in the Sky I'd like, actually, which is a sphere one, and That's been a difficult one to track down. So lots of Ike. Yeah. I mean, this is somebody I'm interested in, a French writer. Yeah, you never really see these very much. Pierre Barbet in Door. The Napoleon of Eridanus, and there's several of those. And the one that I want to pick up at some point, which Maurice has got here, is Game Cyborgs Play, so which is a great title. Another book I'd wanted for a while, and it's a door, that I think is probably worth having. And I've always quite sort of fancied it because it's got the wildest cover. And Maurice had a few of these, so if you fancy this, you can get one yourself from All You Need Is Books. And this is door number 28, and this is Stress Pattern by Neil Barrett Jr., who's best known for the post-apocalyptic novel Through Darkest America. And there you go. And as you see, it's got this rather strange, it does look as phallic, I know, but it's a rather strange sort of worm type thing on the front, and some weird beings there. And that's a Josh Kirby cover, obviously, I would say. And the blurb on the back is absolutely wild. It's very, very hard to sort of explain what it is, but what I would say is seek it out for yourself. And I love that title, Stress Pattern, really good. So there's a little door from my sort of door wants list, which is quite modest because there is a lot of very minor stuff in door, but you know, isn't that great? And I am a sucker for a good title, as you know, and it's great to see things you don't recognize. I mean, this here, The Big Wave, The Day London Collapsed, look at that, a catastrophe novel, one that I don't know, from NEL. Obviously 1970s. John Barnes, gosh, I'd forgotten that one. Son of Origin, that's somebody I'm thinking of looking at again soon, is John Barnes. Neil Barrett Jr., a name we don't hear enough as well. But as you see, it's a complete embarrassment of riches, it really is. Stephen Baxter, it's funny, I've been thinking a lot recently about the 80s as well as the 90s, and back when I used to get into Zone regularly when it first appeared, there was like a new wave of British writers then who weren't new wave. They were sort of mostly sort of hard SF writers who had sort of taken on some of the stuff in new wave. And there was a point where Colin Greenland, who's a really good writer, wanted to try and come up with a name for this loose group, this sort of anti-movement that came out of Interzone, of people like Baxter and Paul Macaulay, Eric Brown, a few others, Keith Brook possibly, Paul Vermans, and he basically had the idea that they were a new generation, and because genetic engineering was talked about more in the 80s, he thought, why not call them gene rats? But it never took off. So at some point I'm going to do a video about the gene rats and why that didn't take off as a sort of handle. This is obviously some Bester here, and we love Bester. There's Gollum to the Power of 100 in Timescape. I've got the hardcover of that. Very underrated book. And basically, you know, so that's going to come up on the channel as well. So I do hope you're seeing things here that you want, and that you get on the net and get that finger clicking and get those gaps filled, because as I say, you will find lots of great prices here. A lot of Maurice's books are $3.95, $4.95, and his grading, as I say, is super accurate, I find always. James Blish. So this is a really rare opportunity to see into what a major dealer has and does. And you know, you think there was a time when all these books were new on bookshelves all around the UK and the USA, and obviously we're seeing a lot of UK editions here because we're in the UK. So it's all sorts of fantastic stuff. John Brunner, Children of the Thunder, that's one I don't have. I must pick that up at some point as well. You see, this is why I need to come back with Jules when Jules does some filming and get my list together properly, because as I say, I've got a bit of a list at home based on Maurice's listings, but yeah, all sorts of great stuff. So The Seas, Joe Clayton, and as you see, there isn't a lot of room here. There's an awful lot of stuff. D.G. Compton is a great writer. Look at that. Back of Town Blues. That was the last one. That's more like a straight crime novel, though it does have an SF background. But this is a great book, Chronicles, which had a much longer title that I'm not going to attempt to remember in hardcover. Michael Coney, and there's some copies of Dimension 4 there, which is an anthology. And yeah, I'm a bit of an anthology nut as well, you know, that's the thing. It's sort of, the nostalgia factor is so big, isn't it, you know, when you look back at these things. Now, a lot of you are not old guys like me. A lot of you are younger people, so you're probably seeing a lot of these things for the first time. And this really, it rather reminds me of, there used to be a bookshop in Hay-on-Wye called Red Star. Was it 5 Star? I'd have to ask Graham, he'll tell me. But it was all SF, and it was like this. And I used to go in there at least once a year. And old Welsh lady by the counter used to say, "Are you the boys who come over every year?" to me and my mates. And we'd say yes. And it's by tons of stuff, lots of Doubleday hardcovers and what have you. And there's a rather nice Delaney there. A Very Honour, Unbroken Spine. Those are like hen's teeth. So if you're after that as a collection filler, please go for it. Some PKD. Maurice and I were talking actually about PKD and how, you know, there's not a lot out there second hand these days, and there hasn't been for some time, you know, this is the thing. And we'll just skip around through past the magazines, because that's a rabbit hole I've never fallen down. Stephen Donaldson, I mean, there was a time when Stephen Donaldson was massive, and when I started book selling, gosh, I used to sell tons and tons of those. And there's a couple of books, the Daughter of Regals, which was a singleton, and of course there was a diptych as well, Man Rides Through, and that's the second one. It's not duology, kids, it's diptych, that's the correct term. Yeah, well, you know, I could spend some serious money here. So I have to say, I've been buying from Maurice on and off since he pretty much started trading, and more recently because I've been gap filling with his amazing prices. Is Suzette Hayden Elgin, that's somebody I mentioned in a video a few times a while ago early on today's channel. And there's some Harlan Ellison here. Gosh, I do love Harlan. There's lots of Harlan coming up. Got all those, of course, but you know, I've been collecting Harlan for a long time, so lucky me. MJ Eng, somebody you don't hear much about at all these days. Farmer, I do like my Phil Farmer. It's a nice one too. It's a nice copy of Night of Light. Now, of course, if you're a rock and roll fan, you should know this, but you probably don't. That's the book which inspired Jimi Hendrix's famous song Purple Haze, and I'll do a video about that coming up on the channel at some point. So there you go. Lots more Phil. Here's one I've got at home. I mean, I'm picking out things that you've seen probably, but that's A Woman a Day, which is also known as Time Stop, aka The Day of Time Stop, and that's the sequel to The Lovers. Great stuff. And lots of other great Phils here. Look at that. That's nice. I think I'm going to have that because I haven't read that book for years, and it's quite uncommon with the Unbroken Spine, so I'm actually going to grab that one and add that to the stash, which Maurice already has aside for me. Mick Farren, Protectorate. And if you know Mick Farren, great counterculture writer, he wrote the definitive rock and roll novel, The Tale of Woolly's Rats. He's dead now, sadly. Lots of great rock and roll journalism and some good SF as well. He was a great guy. He used to go out with Jermaine Greer. You know, what a man. How many people go out with Jermaine Greer and survive, you know? Even these days, even she's in trouble, you know, with the sort of politically correct crowd. You know, it's sad but true, really. Great woman. Okay. Lots of Alan Dean Foster. If you're an Alan Dean Foster freak, obviously there's loads here. You will have seen me filming some of Troutmark books in Cardiff, where they had loads of US editions, absolutely sort of mint, and the one I really wanted was Cash-a-Lot, and sadly somebody else got back to it before me. Yeah, Craig Shaw Gardner. Yeah, they sort of, a lot of these had sort of Josh Kirby covers, so they look rather like Pratchett's books, and obviously that was deliberate, and they were quite popular for a while, but nobody ever quite sort of nailed the whole thing with Terry, really. Nobody really sort of managed to grab his ground from under him in any serious way, you know. So Mark S. Gester, now there's an interesting figure, and which one of these don't I have? There's one I don't have. It's one I've read, but it's one I don't have. It's that one there, so I must pick a copy of that off at some point. He wrote his first books when he was in college, you know, and they're quite sort of gloomy sort of things. They're very interesting, and sorry about the camera wobble, but it's all one-handed stuff here, so I didn't think there's any point in bringing, you know, the tripod, because as you can see, we're seeing more. And this is the edition of Neuromancer that I bought first time around, and I might have to have that because I do love that book, and mine is in real state. And of course, seeing William Gibson, we must talk about Cyberpunk. And you know, Cyberpunk, steampunk, these labels, they get sort of tossed around, and there's these people came up with things like diesel punk and all these punk things, and most of them aren't punk at all. That's the whole thing. But somebody who can claim to be a real cyberpunk is Bruce Bethke, and this is Head Crash in Orbit, and it was published, we won the Philip K. Dick Award in 1995, which means that it was a paperback original in America. And I think he was supposed to sort of have a big film deal as well. Now, Bruce Bethke, basically, he coined the word cyberpunk, and he wrote a story called Cyberpunk. And this is sort of back in the early 80s, obviously, before, you know, the thing sort of became a thing. And he sort of wrote lots of computer manuals and stuff, but it was a good sort of like 13, 14 years after he coined the term and wrote the original story that he wrote this novel, which I must admit I've never read. It's quite chunky, and it's about a character called Jack Burroughs. Well, obviously it's a William Burroughs reference, so there you go. That's very punk. And Joel Rosenberg says on the back, watch out Bruce Sterling, William Gibson and John Shirley. Here comes Bruce Bethke, and he's got a chainsaw. Well, we shall see. I don't particularly like this cover. It was issued with another cover. I was hoping to get that one. Don't like this sticker. I don't think it'll come off, though. So that's a bit of an omission, really. So he's somebody who can claim to be one of the original cyberpunks. And, you know, because he coined the term, you know, we must give him our fealty. So I'll let you know when I've read it, because I don't think I ever did. Real State. And it's uncommon like that, as I say. Stuart Gordon, Ron Goulart. I mean, all the names are here, you know, all the names here. Simon R. Green. Simon R. Green used to work in a bookshop I worked in, but he worked there after me. I've met him a couple of times. Had a great career in the States. I think he lives, or certainly lived, in Bradford and Avon. He was a nice guy when I talked to him, I must say. But as I say, we didn't work in that shop at the same time. He worked there after me, so. Lots of Harry Harrison. And again, apologies that I'm not showing you many covers, but you know, we need to keep things in order here. And at the same time, it is mostly just to get you looking and thinking about, you know, the extent of what we have and what we've seen. Here's a nice pan lozenge. Look at that. Waldo and Magic Ink. And Waldo's a term which Heinlein came up with, of course, which got adopted as a proper scientific, or should I say engineering term. So you can't really go wrong. There's a Heinlein I've not seen for a long time, Number of the Beast. Isn't that beautiful? I'm going to have that as well. This is shocking. I need to stop. Great stuff. I'm not a massive Heinlein fan. It is mostly just nostalgia, I have to say. See, if this was live, you could probably sort of Bluetooth me or something and say, Steve, stop there, I want to see that. But, you know, as I say, all this stuff is online on the website. So there you go. Marvellous. Is it round the corner? Fantastic. Seeing all the great names of the past and the present. I don't think there's any SF here from the future, but you know, this maybe some of the authors I don't recognise have slipped through from other times. Gosh, I've just looked behind me and it's really, really great. Hang on. Something that I'd arranged to buy from Maurice before I went over there, I'd seen it on his website, was the very wonderfully entitled Space-Time Donuts by Rudy Rucker. Now, you can't really go wrong with that. It's Ace, it's A format. I'm sure all the A format stuff first. This is from late 80s, early 90s. Let's just see. 81, so it's earlier than I thought. It's an early Rucker. And he's sort of kind of halfway in between John Sladek and some of the more cyberpunky people. There's a Philip K. Dick influence. I'll be honest and say he's never really grabbed me, but if you like Sladek, Vonnegut, George Saunders, you like those sort of postmodern fabulous, probably grab you. But this is a great title, and it says on the back that, you know, it's about a contemporary tale of a future in which staying stoned, sex-starved and stupid is the approved way of life. So Space-Time Donuts, great title. It's got dreadful paper stock in there, but look at that, absolutely beautiful. And Maurice did me a really good deal on all of these and let me have them much cheaper than they were. Obviously, you know, I'm sort of exposing his stuff to you guys, and obviously I've been a customer a long time, as I say, on and off for nearly 30 years. So really, really great stuff. So that's Space-Time Donuts. This is How to Spend a Wednesday Afternoon, as I say. And yeah, I know I look tired. I wasn't up late last night. I was awake early this morning. Gosh, this is so great. Right, so in as much as I want to show you even more here, I think we'll have a quick look at the hardcovers because, as I say, I don't want to keep Maurice waiting all day because he's a busy man. He's got a van full of several thousand books, he was telling me when he picked me up. So he's got a sorting and listing to do. So we'll have a quick look at the hardcovers and then we'll wrap it up. I've also started thinking recently about British writers from the late 80s, early 90s, from the Interzone school, the magazine which David Pringle edited so beautifully, who I haven't read or who I haven't read for a long time. This is Keith Brook, who I have read stories by. I don't think I ever read a novel, and this is his first novel, Keepers of the Peace, and Golanx and Octavo, really nice. And Keith was only about 20 when he wrote this, 22, which is really, really impressive. And it doesn't have a massive critical reputation. He is still working. He does collaborative things with Eric Brown. They're mostly small press things which come from Newcon and PS and what have you. And, you know, this to say was less than a £5 on Maurice's site, and he gave it to me for, he didn't give it to me, but I had it for a lot less from him. So you can't go wrong, really. Obviously not a massive collectible, but quite nice to have. Look at that. Isn't that great? So some hardcovers here. And as you see, Maurice has got them bagged, keep them nice and dry. And of course I do that as well with a lot of my stuff. And yeah, I'm seeing all sorts of, oh gosh, it's painful. It really, really is. There's so much stuff here I want to look at. So I think when I come back with Jules, I was planning to shoot, but I'll probably just do some shopping while Jules has a shoot, because there's just so much great stuff here, you know, it really is. And it's a joy to see. And you know, there's you know, you can buy a lot of books online these days, but a lot of them you don't know what you're going to get, and people don't grade things properly. And look at that, marvelous stuff. That's one of my favorite books, Alison. I've got that again. I'm showing you stuff I've got, but I love the stuff I love. And this is one I used to have, Farmer, Red Hawk's Rage. Wow, yeah. Did I have a hardcover? I certainly had the paperback. There's that jacket, really, really good. Lots of Bayon stuff here for the military SF. Randall Garrett, Too Many Magicians. Look at that, MacDonald, 1960s, early 70s livery. Really nice with the SF on that. Isn't that beautiful? Really great. I'm going to backtrack, I'm afraid, because I did see some Robert Bloch's here, and I've just got to look at it. I've always loved this title, Atoms and Evil. Robert Hale. There are Hale collectors out there, and of course most of them went to libraries. You know, this is the thing. Keith Brooks, Keeper of the Peace. I'm probably going to have that, I suppose, because I'm in that sort of mood. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. Arthur C. Clarke. Yeah, there's probably some things I'm not going to even look at because I'll get too distracted. So look at this, the After Midnight Ghost book. Hutchinson, lovely. From the days when, you know, publishers didn't sort of, you know, they didn't sort of hem themselves in. They did all sorts of stuff, you know. Everybody did a bit of everything. A lot of these imprints, you know, they're gone now. Look at that, really nice Sean Hutson omnibus. Look at that, laminated boards, fantastic stuff. Great guy, Sean. Some Gary Kilworth down there. Do like Gary a lot. A talented guy. I guess for you guys this is rather like when I filmed my friend Graham's collection, the stunning SF collection, which has had over 3,000 views now. And you know, this is bigger, of course. Now, interesting, I haven't seen this for a long time, The Book of Fantasy, edited by Borges. Xanadu, short-lived publisher. Ken MacLeod, love Ken, what a great guy he is. Did an event with Ken in 2017. Lovely, lovely, lovely man. I was as sick as a dog. I had a really bad cold, so I couldn't go to the pub afterwards with the guys, and apparently Ken kept saying, where's Steve? You know, whiskey will do him good, but I'm the sort of person that if I have a whiskey when I've got a cold, it'll kill me. So, you know, it's not something I could do. So, Moorcock, Thomas F. Montalone, good grief. This is a book I've not seen for a long time. Good grief, I'd forgotten this. The Cross of Frankenstein by Robert J. Myers. Look at that, isn't that fantastic stuff? And that's Hamish Hamilton, you know, mainstream publisher. Larry Niven. Yeah, it's all here, guys, isn't it? An absolute delight. Oh, look at this. Granada. Wow, Ghostbreakers. Charles Platt, The City Dwellers. Fantastic book. I do love Charles. Great stuff. I keep seeing things I've got as well, which is good because it shows that my collection is probably nearer to the sort of ideal than I think it should be. Loads more there. Here's somebody you don't hear much about these days, Michael Scott Rowan. He was really popular. This is a really, look at that, really nice Golax. Isn't that beautiful? Lovely. Yeah, he was one of the guys who did well in the fantasy boom. Obviously there's fantasy and horror here as well as SF, and with this lot. So, bit of Silverberg, Mutants, do like Bob, as we know. Now this is a book I want, but I want the Gollancz Yellow Jacket, and it's really hard to find. Now the cover to that, now not this edition, but the paperback, the US paperback, is by Jim Burns, and Jim lives in Trowbridge, of course, which is no distance from here. I go through Trowbridge on the train to get here. Amazing. As you can see, I'm finally sort of stunned into silence by the joy of seeing all this lovely stuff. So fantastic. Obviously Maurice has fewer hardcovers in his stash, but he has them in decent nick and in good prices and what have you. And something that I've often thought of picking up, because it's a Sidgwick, and I do like my Sidgwicks. It's not a Sidgwick Silver, which is the slightly larger format from later on, from late 70s and early 80s. That's my designation. In the same way I use Panalogians, I use Sidgwick Silver, even though this is silver. This is much earlier. This is Charles Platt's The City Dwellers, which is a stone cold new wave classic. And as I say, Maurice did me a really good deal on these. And this is 1970. And bits of it were in New Worlds magazine. I haven't read it probably since the 80s, and I did meet Charles once, and he's very incisive, and he didn't sort of produce a huge amount. He's still out there, I think, still writing, and it's great, you know, because it's a nice little octavo format. On the back it tells you lots of the other things they published. I love seeing what was happening in the world of SF in 1970 on their list. It's great to see. And this is a near future story about urban blight. It's very downbeat and new wavy, and I will talk about this. So I want to do a video about Charles at some point, because he's under-regarded and a great writer. So there's a little tagline there that says, "The city is killing man mentally and physically." Well, I think that's true. Bliss. As you see behind me on the podium, there's some sort of fairly sort of old school things that you'll know, and you know, some of you might be shocked that I don't have some of these books, but a few of them are things I used to have, like The Farmer, Day World. I don't know why I got rid of that. The Other Farmer, Gods of River World. I had a bit of a Farmer colour at one point, got rid of loads of my stuff, and I wish I'd kept it, so I picked these up very reasonably. The Heinlein I showed in the main body of the video, and the thing is that that's really uncommon book in that condition, so I'm really pleased with that. And it's more about the iconography with me for Heinlein, my memories of seeing them when I was a kid and thinking, wow, they look really exciting. They all have these sort of biblical type titles, you know, the Number of the Beast, what have you. So that was exciting. Imperial Earth, I do like a panel lozenge, never read that one. Another thing is I have been looking at hardcovers of some of these books. I've been looking at hardcovers of Imperial Earth, looking at hardcovers of Day World, and I'm not sure I really want to splash out on them. I'm not sure if any of the copies of Day World out there in hardcover are going to be really, really nice. This is a Grafton, and you know how I feel about Grafton. I love it. And there's that Neuromancer, and I bought that because it's in really good nick. It's a second printing. I've still got my first printing, which normally lives there, but I was reading it last night, and it's been like a reading copy for me, and the spine's faded. This is really good nick, and basically it's signed. I didn't realize it was signed. I must have at one point, so I'm not sure when I got Bill to sign that for me. I think it might have been in '96, which I think was the third time I met him. So it's not going to go out, you know, it's going to be retained. And I think now I've got that again, I don't know, I'm quite tempted to sell my 10th anniversary hardcover Neuromancer, which has got an introduction with it, which is quite uncommon. I was told by Andy Richards of Cold 10H, so I might move that on because things are filling up again, and it's a book which usually goes for about 250 quid, so, you know, maybe we'll see. And, you know, that's going to make not a lot of space, but, you know, I've got a true first and everything else signed by him, and, you know, you've got to let some things go at some point, so maybe that will go. There was an Ace hardcover at the same time, 10th anniversary, which is more common. So, you know, I could always go with that to get that extra bit of text, but we'll see, I guess. I think probably the most attractive book here, and I don't know why I never got around to this, as I do love Pan, is Brian Stableford's War Games, of absolutely beautiful jacket design. And, you know, these things that you're seeing here, there's an Asimov and a Niven, which are kind of, you know, nostalgia buys for me, because they're not guys I'm massive on. Really is typical of the sort of thing that Maurice has in thousands. Well, you've seen it in this video. Okay, so I don't know whether any of that was coherent, but I just really, really enjoyed filming that, and I hope that you just enjoyed seeing this fantastic dealership. And I could spend all day here, and I'm going to crave Maurice's indulgence for about 10 minutes now and have a quick scan through and see if there's anything else I fancy. And thanks to Maurice and Zardoz and All You Need Is Books. So do visit the website. I'll stick the link in the description and what have you. Let me know what you think. And as I say, this is the place to fill your gaps. Just look at it. Isn't it fantastic? And I'll be back here again in a few weeks with Jules Burt. This is Steve Andrews, Outlaw Bookseller. Please subscribe, like, comment, super thanks if you want. And I sign out for now. Bye. And what else can you say? It's just fantastic, isn't it? One final quick skiff around. Please subscribe, like, comment, and super thanks if you desire.